My name is Anna. I'm 23, and I came to the countryside because city life had stopped feeling real. I rented a small room on an old farm for the summer to clear my mind, maybe write something, maybe just breathe again. The woman who owned the place was Margaret, 61. She lived alone, except for 2 dogs and a few horses. The first morning I met her, she was already outside, sleeves rolled up, repairing a fence. The sunrise behind her turned the air gold. "You must be the new tenant," she said, smiling with quiet strength. "Breakfast's at 7. We start early here." Her voice carried something steady, the kind of calm that only comes from years of living close to the land. I remember thinking she looked like she belonged to the place. Sun-touched skin, silver hair tied back, eyes the color of worn denim. The first weeks were simple. I helped where I could, feeding chickens, watering the garden, learning the rhythm of work that had no rush. Margaret moved with precision, as if every action mattered. She'd explain things once, then let me find my way. Sometimes she'd laugh when I got something wrong, but never unkindly. Evenings were my favorite. We'd sit on the porch, drinking tea as the fields darkened into blue shadows. Crickets, distant thunder, the smell of hay. Everything felt slower, heavier in a good way. She'd talk about the seasons, about how the soil remembers every hand that's touched it. I listened like a child hearing a story. One night, a storm rolled in. The power flickered and went out. I ran to the barn to close the doors, and she followed with a lantern. We stood there as the rain hammered the roof, lightning flashing through the cracks. "You get used to storms here," she said. "They remind you that you're small, but alive." In that light, just her face and the glow of the lantern, she looked softer, almost younger. Something in me shifted, though I couldn't name it then. After the rain, she offered me her old jacket. It smelled like cedar and hay. "Keep it," she said. "You'll need it again." And somehow, I knew I would. The next morning, the air still smelled of wet soil and smoke from the storm. Dew covered everything: the grass, the wooden steps, even the jacket Margaret had given me. I wore it anyway. It was too big, but warm, and somehow comforting. Margaret was already in the garden, trimming vines that had fallen overnight. She looked up when she saw me and smiled the same calm, knowing smile she always did. "You survived your first farm storm," she said. "That deserves coffee." We drank it on the porch in silence. The world around us was waking up. Birds, distant tractors, the wind carrying the scent of earth. It was ordinary, but in that stillness, I felt something unfamiliar, a kind of peace I hadn't felt in years. Over the next weeks, I stopped counting the days. We worked side by side, feeding animals, mending fences, sharing small jokes. Margaret didn't talk much, but when she did, every word felt deliberate, like it belonged exactly where it was. Sometimes I'd catch her watching me, and there'd be a softness in her eyes that made my chest tighten in a way I couldn't explain. One evening, we built a fire by the orchard. The sun dipped low, painting everything gold and amber. She handed me an old tin mug of tea and said, "You're getting the hang of this life. Most people run after a week." "I think I was running before I came here," I said quietly. "I just didn't know from what." She nodded, staring into the fire. "That's how it starts for most of us. You think you're running towards something. Turns out, you were looking for stillness." The light flickered on her face, tracing every line gently, like it admired her. I watched her, realizing how different she was from everyone I'd ever met. Slower, braver, grounded. It wasn't just admiration. It was something deeper, quieter, and far more confusing. She noticed my gaze but didn't look away. Instead, she smiled softly and said, "You think too loudly." I laughed, embarrassed. "Maybe." "You don't have to here," she said. "Let the quiet do the thinking." We sat like that until the fire burned low, both of us wrapped in the sound of crickets and wind through the trees. When I finally stood to leave, she rested a hand on my shoulder. It was brief, steady, but it sent a shiver through me that lingered long after. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept hearing her voice, calm, grounded, certain, and wondered what it would be like if I stayed longer than the summer. Something had changed between us, and even if I couldn't name it yet, I knew it wasn't going away.